I shouldn't have been in my father's study that night. The funeral was only hours behind me, and my fingers still trembled from the eulogy I barely choked out. But something wouldn't let me sleep. Grief, maybe? Or suspicion. The room was just as he left it. Books stacked like skyscrapers, the scent of stale coffee lingering in the air, and his old laptop humming faintly on the desk. I sat in his worn leather chair and opened the drawer where he kept trivial things. Stationery, loose change, receipts. But wedged under an envelope labeled property deed, Maya's copy, was something more curious. A black USB drive taped to the underside of the drawer. I pulled it out with trembling hands. Plugging it into his laptop, I expected tax files, maybe old photos. Instead, what opened was a folder called Private. Inside, a series of recurring wire transfers. Years' worth. Thousands of dollars. All sent to a name I didn't recognize. Elena M. Ruiz. Some in recent months. Others dating back almost 20 years. And then, the photos. My father, arm in arm with a woman who wasn't my mother, smiling, radiant, in front of a small house I'd never seen before. And next to them, 2 kids. Teenagers now, judging by the timestamps. 1 boy, 1 girl. The resemblance was chilling. My father's cheekbones, his lopsided grin, his eyes. I slammed the laptop shut, my breath hitched in my throat, eyes brimming with a mix of betrayal and disbelief. This wasn't some old affair. This wasn't a phase or a mistake. It was a second life. My father hadn't died a mystery. He died a liar. And I was about to find out just how deep the lie ran. To the world, my father was a giant. Thomas Reyes, architect, philanthropist, quietly revered for designing schools in rural provinces and funding scholarships for underprivileged youth. He gave speeches at universities, cut ribbons at charity galas, and never once missed a Father's Day with me. At least, I thought. I'm Maya Reyes, 29. I run my own design consultancy in Makati, mostly urban housing solutions, sustainable layouts, that sort of thing. People said I followed in my father's footsteps, and I wore that comparison like a badge of honor. We weren't just close, we were a team. He reviewed my blueprints like they were Nobel material. We had Sunday breakfasts at this tiny diner near his condo every week. I was his only child, or so I believed. The golden daughter, the heir, the one he raised to carry his name forward. He used to tell me, "You didn't just inherit my work, Maya. You inherited my soul." Now, sitting alone in his darkened study with that USB drive burning a hole in my pocket, those words tasted like ash. What kind of man has 2 lives and never slips? What kind of father lies with such precision it feels like love? I found myself replaying our last conversation, just 3 days before the heart attack that took him. He'd sounded distracted, like something was weighing on him, though he brushed it off. "Everything's in your name," he said, sliding a folder across the table. Just in case. I thought he meant the condo, maybe his savings, but now I wasn't sure what he'd meant, or who else he meant it for, and I hadn't even started on the real betrayal yet. That wouldn't come until I discovered what my cousin did, or rather, what she made me do. The first crack appeared at the wake. It was subtle. So subtle, I almost missed it. My cousin Ariana approached me with a softness in her tone that felt off. Too rehearsed. Too careful. "I'm so sorry, Maya," she said, placing her hand over mine. "Tito Tomas meant everything to all of us. If there's anything I can help with, especially with the estate, just say the word." Ariana and I weren't close. She was my mother's niece, and while we shared blood, we rarely shared space. She'd always been shrewd, too polished for someone who hadn't really worked a day in her life. She floated from one side gig to another, living off whispers of opportunity and the goodwill of family. So why was she suddenly interested in helping? That night I found the second crack. I was going over some of my father's property documents, trying to make sense of his holdings. He owned his condo, the beach house in Batangas, and, oddly, a small parcel of land in a city I didn't recognize. Silang. But something else caught my eye. A deed, recently updated. My father's signature at the bottom, and mine, right beside it. Except I didn't remember signing anything. My stomach dropped. The deed showed that a large property, an ancestral home I vaguely remembered from childhood, had been transferred from my father to me. And then, 2 days later, transferred again from me to Ariana. Both transactions were notarized, both looked legitimate, but I had no memory of signing a second document. I called her that same night. My voice was tight, controlled. Hey, Ari, quick question. Did you help Dad process any property papers recently? A pause. Yeah. He mentioned wanting to clean things up before... Her voice faltered, just enough to seem sincere. You signed some papers at the hospital, remember? No, I said coldly. I don't. Well, you were emotional. Maybe you forgot. A white, hot heat surged through my chest. No, I hadn't forgotten. I'd been manipulated. Ariana had used the moment I was most vulnerable, barely days before Dad died, to slide papers in front of me, cloaked in condolence and care. And I had handed over a piece of my family legacy. Just like that. I sat in silence after the call, the world spinning slowly. Somewhere in my chest, my heart was trying to roar, but it couldn't get past the grief. One betrayal, I might have survived, but now I was drowning in two. For 3 days, I avoided opening that USB drive again. It sat on my desk like a loaded weapon, silent, heavy with danger, waiting for me to either confront the truth or crumble beneath it. But the thing about secrets is, once you know they exist, they don't wait patiently. They whisper, they gnaw, they own your thoughts until you can't tell where your pain ends and your paranoia begins. So on the 4th night, I clicked the folder again. This time, I didn't stop at the first few images. I forced myself to scroll through everything. Birthday parties, graduation photos, trips to Tagaytay. One shot of my father kissing a woman on the forehead while she held a baby. The woman, Elena Ruiz, was beautiful in a quiet, tired way, a schoolteacher, according to one of the scanned files. The children were older now, both in their teens. The girl looked strikingly like me, same chin, same quiet, unreadable gaze, and the boy, he had Dad's shoulders. There were letters, too, drafts, never sent, written in my father's handwriting. Some addressed to me, most addressed to them. I wish I could tell Maya, but how do you explain a lifetime of love divided between two truths? She'll hate me, but I need her to understand I didn't abandon one family. I tried to hold both. If you're reading this, Maya, please know that keeping them from you wasn't out of shame. It was fear, cowardice, but not a lack of love. I leaned back, hand shaking over my mouth. My chest felt like it was caving in from the inside. I hadn't just lost a father. I'd lost the version of him I thought was real. My mother, who died of cancer 6 years ago, never mentioned any of this. Had she known? Had she suspected? The betrayal ran like rot beneath everything I thought I understood about my childhood. I wasn't an only child. I was just the one he raised in the light. The next morning, I drove to Silang. It took 2 hours, but I couldn't wait anymore. I had to see them, not out of curiosity, but out of a need to feel something solid in this mess of shadows, to put faces to the people who'd lived in the blind spots of my life. The house was modest, tucked behind a bakery and shaded by old mango trees. A rusted tricycle was parked in the driveway. I didn't knock. I sat in the car, staring. A woman stepped out, Elena. She wore a faded blouse and denim skirt, hair tied back. Her eyes scanned the street, and then for a moment, they landed on me. No recognition, just the polite caution of a stranger. But I recognized her. I saw what my father had loved. I rolled the window down halfway. "Elena Ruiz?" My voice cracked. She walked toward me slowly. "Yes?" "I'm Maya," I said, barely above a whisper. "Thomas was my father." She froze. For a second, all the oxygen in the world seemed to leave the space between us. Her face twisted. Shock, guilt, sorrow, all flashing across her eyes like lightning across a dark sky. She nodded once. "I was wondering when you'd come," she said. That broke something in me. "You knew about me?" I choked. "All these years, and you knew?" She nodded again, softer. "I did. He talked about you often. He kept pictures of you in his drawer. He loved you, Maya." I laughed bitterly. "Loved me? He lied to me." She didn't argue, just looked at me with a sadness I couldn't decipher. "I never asked him to choose," she said quietly. "But I also didn't send him away. We were complicated." I looked past her toward the doorway. A teenage girl peered through the screen door, wide brown eyes. Her brother joined her a second later. My half-siblings. We stared at each other across the war zone of our father's legacy. "I don't know what to do with this," I whispered. Elena stepped back. "You don't have to do anything today." But I did. I had to get out of the car. I had to breathe the same air they breathed. I had to look them in the eye and not collapse from the weight of all I didn't know. And I had to make peace with the possibility that my father, my brilliant, beloved, broken father, wasn't the man I thought he was. He was human, fallible, capable of loving more than one life and destroying both in the process. That night, I didn't cry. I sat on the floor of my apartment, all the lights off, and stared into the dark. It wasn't the betrayal alone that hurt. It was realizing that the truth didn't come with clear villains. Only people, hurting, hiding, surviving. And now, one of those people had tricked me into giving away property my father meant to leave behind. Ariana. And this time, I wasn't just hurt. I was ready. But I wouldn't lash out in rage. I would move smart, because I was my father's daughter, even in the shadow of his sins. I stopped answering calls after the visit to Silong. People meant well, relatives, old college friends, a few work clients offering condolences. But their voices felt like static over a radio I couldn't tune into. Even their sympathy annoyed me. What were they mourning? The Thomas Reyes they saw in glossy magazine spreads? The man who gave scholarships, but kept a family tucked away in the margins? The world was grieving a myth. Only I was grieving the man. Alone in my apartment, I started deleting voicemails without listening. The only message I replayed over and over was my father's, left just 4 hours before he collapsed in the hallway of his condo. "Maya, I'm proud of you. That's all. Maybe we can talk more next week. There's something I want to tell you." He never got the chance. Or maybe he'd had 29 years and chose silence instead. I started losing sleep. I'd wake at 3 a.m., gasping, convinced I heard keys in the door, his keys. Or I'd dream about that photo of him with Elena and the kids, and I'd be in it, slightly out of place, smiling in a family I didn't belong to. Grief is a storm you think you can outrun, But betrayal? Betrayal camps in your lungs. Ariana texted twice. The first message was full of faux warmth. "Hey, cuz, just checking in. I know things have been heavy. Let me know if you need anything, okay?" The second was colder, triggered, no doubt, by my silence. "The papers are legal, Maya. You signed them. Let's not make this messy." "Let's not make this messy," I laughed. Actually laughed out loud in my dark kitchen. My father's body wasn't even fully cold when she slithered her way into the documents. She preyed on my grief with the precision of a surgeon. The Ariana I grew up with, shallow, glamorous, two-faced, had finally shed all pretense. And yet, I still hesitated. I could hire a lawyer. I could fight back. But every time I reached for the phone, I stopped. Not because I was afraid, no, something else, something deeper. The urge to destroy her was there. So was the fear that becoming like her would be a second betrayal of myself. Instead, I spiraled inward. I stopped taking consulting gigs, let my inbox pile up. Days blurred, I forgot meals. My father's study, where I'd once found comfort, became a crime scene I couldn't bear to enter. The photos, the letters, the deed transfer, all of it haunted me like ash clinging to the corners of a burned-out home. And yet, a strange thing started to happen. The first thing I did was take a shower. Not a symbolic act of rebirth or anything that poetic, just a simple scalding hot shower. The kind that peels grief off your skin layer by layer. I hadn't realized how long it had been. My reflection in the mirror startled me. Hollow cheeks, eyes ringed with red. I looked like someone who hadn't come home in days, even though I hadn't left. I made coffee next, not the instant kind. I ground the beans, boiled the water, took my time. I wasn't rushing anymore. I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. And I was done being frozen. The first call I made was to Dad's lawyer, attorney Manuel Fortunado. He'd handled my father's estate since I was 10. He was meticulous, discreet, and loyal to the family, our family. "Thank you for returning my call," I said as he picked up. "Of course, Maya, I've been meaning to speak with you. Actually, there are inconsistencies in the document filings." My heart skipped. "Which documents?" I asked, already knowing. "The secondary deed transferring the Ceylon property from you to Miss Ariana Ignacio. The notary stamp is suspicious. I'm still investigating." I closed my eyes. Relief flickered, but so did resolve. "Keep digging, quietly," I said, "and let me know if anything else looks forged." He paused, then added gently, "Your father left a personal letter with me. He asked it only be given to you after the reading of the will." I froze. "When?" "We're scheduling it for next week. But if you need the letter sooner..." "No," I said, "I'll wait." I wasn't sure why I said it. Maybe I needed to prove to myself that I could, that I didn't need every answer right this second. Later that day, I drove to the property in question, the one Ariana stole. It had once belonged to my grandfather, a quiet estate on the outskirts of Laguna, surrounded by old acacia trees and thick, brooding silence. As a child, I'd played hide-and-seek among those trees. My father used to say, "This land remembers us, Maya, even when we forget ourselves." Now it was quiet, locked, a crude padlock on the gate, Ariana's doing, no doubt. But I wasn't here to force my way in. I stood by the gate and took it all in. The air, the soil, the weight of memory pressing into my ribs. This land was part of my bloodline, and someone had tried to steal it through a signature I never gave. I drove back in silence, the wheels of something larger beginning to turn inside me. I didn't want to ruin Ariana, not the way I did days ago when revenge felt like oxygen. I wanted to understand her first, to look her in the eye and let her see that I knew. Then I wanted her to feel the discomfort of her own choices, not through fire or fury, but through silence, truth, stillness. The kind of confrontation that lingers long after shouting fades. Because my father lied, Ariana schemed, and I had finally stopped falling. Now I was standing, not to destroy, but to reclaim. Ariana always wore masks well, At family gatherings, she was the one with the perfect lipstick and air kisses. Her voice always just soft enough to seem sweet, just sharp enough to leave paper cuts. She was the kind of person who complimented your dress while calculating the cost, the kind who offered you help only after making sure everyone saw her do it. I knew this, but what I hadn't known, what I hadn't wanted to know, was how easily she could weaponize love, or grief, or blood. So I called her. "Hi," I said, voice even. "I think we should talk, in person." There was a beat of hesitation. "Okay," she said carefully. "My condo?" "No, Dad's study. Tomorrow at noon." I heard the pause, the calculation. She knew the terrain wasn't hers, but she also knew I wouldn't have asked unless something had shifted. When she walked in the next day, she wore white, sleek, immaculate. She always dressed like a woman about to negotiate a business merger. Never mind the fact she hadn't worked a real job in years. "Still full of his books," she said, looking around. "He really lived in his head, didn't he?" I didn't answer. I just gestured to the chair across from me. She sat, poised, smiling, waiting for me to make the first move. "I reviewed the documents," I said. "The property deed, the notary stamp, the signature you claim I gave you." Her smile twitched, barely. I let the silence do the talking. When she finally spoke, her tone was light. "You were grieving. You probably just don't remember signing. I brought it to you at the hospital." "I was never alone with you at the hospital," I cut in. "I checked the visitor logs. You came once, for 20 minutes, and you left with my mother's old handbag, the same one I found in your car last year." That did it. The mask cracked. Not entirely, but just enough to glimpse the panic behind her perfect posture. "Maya, let's not turn this into a witch hunt," she said, voice thinner now. "I'm family. We've always been like sisters." I leaned in, calm as ice. "You forged my signature." She didn't deny it. Didn't confirm it either. She just looked away and adjusted her bracelet. "Do you think you're the only one who lost something?" she whispered, voice sharp with sudden emotion. "Everyone talks about what he gave you, his time, his legacy, his name, but I was there too. I saw the way he treated you like royalty while the rest of us watched from the sidelines." Her eyes shone now, not with regret, but with resentment. "He owed me something," she said, quieter now. "And you? You had more than enough." And there it was. Not greed, entitlement. The belief that my grief was too heavy to notice what she took. That my silence was consent. I stood slowly, walked to the desk, and placed a sealed envelope in front of her. "A letter from Dad," I said. "It's not addressed to you, but you might want to know what kind of man he really was, before you build a future on stolen land." She didn't move. She didn't speak. And I didn't wait. I left her in the study, surrounded by the words of a man who loved too many people in silence and trusted the wrong one with his name. Outside, the air felt clearer. Not because justice had been served, not yet, but because for the first time, I wasn't playing her game. I was rewriting the rules, and she didn't even realize she was already losing. The letter came in a thick cream envelope. His handwriting, familiar, steady, made my chest tighten before I even read a word. I sat at my kitchen table and opened it slowly. "Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and I'm sorry for everything I didn't say while I still had time. I lived 2 lives, not out of malice, but out of fear. You were my greatest joy, and my greatest guilt. I wanted to protect you from the mess I made. Ariana was never supposed to have anything. I knew she was circling. That's why I moved the Laguna property into your name. I hoped you'd see the truth in time. There's more to recover. More I tucked away. Not for her. For you." Attached was a small key. I knew immediately where it went. The second drawer in his office, the one always locked. Inside was a folder labeled contingency. Deeds, savings accounts, a trust fund, instructions for the lawyer, and names. Elena, the children, even me, meticulously accounted for. Dad hadn't tried to cover his sins with flowers. He built a blueprint for repair. Quietly, intentionally. Ariana's name was nowhere in it. For the first time in weeks, I breathed. He didn't leave chaos. He left a map. Now it was my turn to follow it, with clarity, not vengeance. The next morning, I met with Attorney Fortunato. He reviewed the documents from Dad's contingency folder with raised brows and a quiet nod. "This changes everything," he said. We filed a legal motion to contest the fraudulent transfer. The forged signature, the manipulated timing, the missing witnesses. It was sloppy. And Ariana hadn't expected a fight. That same afternoon, I visited the Laguna property again. This time, I brought the real deed and a locksmith. The gate creaked open, and I stepped onto the land like I belonged. Because I did. Inside the house, dust coated everything. But it still smelled like home. My childhood echoed in the walls, in the floorboards that creaked just the same. I opened the windows wide and let the air in. It felt like reclaiming more than just space. It felt like truth. The next day, Ariana called. "You're making this worse than it has to be." "No," I said, calm. "I'm just restoring what should have never been stolen." She sighed. "You think this makes you better than me?" "No," I replied. "It just makes me whole again." And I meant it. I wasn't here to destroy her. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was just done letting silence speak louder than facts. And for once, the truth was on my side. The court hearing was set. Ariana had lawyered up, but her defense was weak. The evidence spoke for itself. Even her attorney looked embarrassed. Still, the judge gave us 2 weeks to mediate before moving to trial. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to decide if I wanted a clean legal victory or something else. That night, I visited Silang again. Elena greeted me with cautious warmth. The children weren't home. We sat in the garden, the air thick with things unsaid. "He didn't mean to hurt you," she said softly. "I know," I replied. And I did. The pain hadn't vanished, but it had softened. Not into acceptance, but into understanding. Before leaving, I handed her a copy of the trust my father created. Their names were there. Secured. Protected. "He did right by you," I said, even if it was too late to say it out loud. Back in the city, I sat in front of my laptop and stared at an email draft. Press release, statement of the truth, every betrayal laid out clearly. I hovered over the send button, and then I closed it. Not out of mercy for Ariana, but because I didn't need the world's applause to feel whole. Let the courts handle justice. I was choosing peace, not silence. Peace. The mediation room was cold. Not physically, but emotionally. Painted in neutral tones, filled with uncomfortable chairs, and a mediator who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Ariana arrived 10 minutes late, no makeup this time, no curated outfit. Just a pale blouse, her hair pulled back, eyes rimmed red. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd just grown. She didn't greet me. She sat across the table and avoided my gaze, thumbing a pen between her fingers. When the mediator asked if we wanted to make opening remarks, I declined. Ariana didn't. "I was angry," she said, surprising both the mediator and me. I didn't plan to go that far, but once I started, it felt too easy. You weren't paying attention. You were grieving. And honestly, part of me thought you deserved to be taken down a notch. I said nothing. She swallowed hard, the mask falling in pieces. My mother, your aunt, was always second place. Your dad helped everyone but never us. He helped strangers more than he helped family. And watching you have everything while we got crumbs, it felt like proof that we didn't matter. I breathed slowly, letting her words settle. The hurt wasn't new, but hearing it said aloud stripped it of venom. I didn't steal because I wanted the land, she said. I stole because I wanted to feel like I had something. My voice came out low, but steady. You didn't need to steal to matter. She looked up finally. Her eyes were tired and honest. I know, she said. Now I do, but then I only saw what I didn't have. The room fell quiet. The mediator leaned forward. So where do we go from here? I looked at Ariana, not with rage, but with the strange grief of seeing someone for what they really are. Not a monster, not a victim, just a woman desperate not to be invisible. I'll drop the fraud charge, I said, if you return the property. Her eyes widened. Just like that? No, not like that, I said. Because I could take you to court, I could drag this into the headlines, but I don't need a win, I need a clean ending. She nodded slowly. And if I say yes? You walk away, quietly, and you never touch anything with my name or his again. Ariana didn't argue. She just nodded. And for the first time in years, I believed her. The papers were signed 2 days later. She left without another word, and I stood in the wreckage of everything we were taught to inherit, land, blood, secrets, and realized something had finally shifted. We had broken the cycle, not by punishing, but by choosing truth over pride. A month passed. The dust of the legal battle had settled. Ariana was gone, moved to another city, according to her sister. We hadn't spoken since the mediation. And strangely, I didn't feel the need to. There was no triumph in her silence, only peace in mine. I returned to work. Not all at once, but enough to feel the world moving again beneath my feet. Projects, designs, deadlines, they reminded me that I was still building something. Not just structures, a life. But something unfinished still tugged at me. One Sunday, I returned to Silong. No announcement, no grand purpose. I simply showed up at the gate. Elena opened the door, surprised but not unkind. The kids were home. They hovered in the background, unsure if they should approach or retreat. I don't know what I'm doing here, I admitted with a half laugh. I just needed to see you. Elena nodded. We're glad you did. We sat on the porch, sipping mango juice like old neighbors, not fractured pieces of a secret. Did he ever talk about me? I asked quietly. All the time, she said. He was proud of you. He kept one of your graduation photos in his wallet. Called you his compass. That broke something in me. Not the same old grief. Something gentler. Something whole. The children, my half-siblings, stepped closer. The girl, Sophia, had her mother's warmth and our father's sharp eyes. The boy, Inigo, was taller now, unsure of how to greet me. Do you want to come inside? Sophia asked. I hesitated, then nodded. Yes, I do. Inside, the house was humble but filled with signs of a full life. Framed school projects, worn couches, a piano with a cracked key. And in the living room corner, a shelf of books, architecture journals, old blueprints, and a small wooden frame with a photo of my father holding all three of us. It was edited, of course, photoshopped. I knew that. But something about it still moved me. They had imagined a life where we weren't secrets to each other. And now, sitting beside them, I realized we didn't have to pretend anymore. "I want to visit sometimes," I said, surprising even myself. "If that's okay." Sophia smiled. "We'd like that." As I left, Elena walked me to the gate. Before I got in the car, she placed something in my hand. It was a small folded note, yellowed at the edges. "Maya, if I've failed you, let it be said that I tried to prepare something better than an apology, a truth. I loved you, and I hope, somehow, you still believe that. Please forgive me, not for me, but for yourself. You're stronger than I ever was. Dad." Tears came easily then, but not from pain, from release. We can't choose the blood we're born into, but we can choose what we carry forward. I chose honesty. I chose legacy. I chose peace. And for the first time since my father died, I felt whole. Not because everything made sense, but because I finally let go of needing it to.